Imagine being thrown out of the only place you called home with no hope and no one to turn to. That was Mikuro's reality until one day she met a billionaire who changed everything. But this is not just a story of rescue. It's a tale of betrayal, shocking secrets, and a love that no one saw coming. How did Mikuro go from a poor maid to something much greater? Find out now. In a small town where news spread quickly, there lived a young woman named Mikuro. She was an orphan, quiet but hardworking. Mikuro had only one thing in the world: a job at a small laundry shop where she washed, ironed, and folded clothes for people who barely noticed her. The shop was not just her workplace, it was her home. A small mat in the corner was where she slept every night, and a single cup and plate were all she owned. Yet Mikuro was grateful. At least I have somewhere to stay, she often whispered to herself one bright morning. Mikuro sat on her mat eating her small bowl of gari soaked in water. Her boss had just opened the shop, and the first customer of the day, a well-dressed woman wearing bright yellow lace, walked in. Mikuro quickly wiped her hands on her dress and grabbed a cup of water to wash her face before starting her work. As she walked through the doorway, she didn't notice the woman stepping into the shop at the same time. They collided. "Hey, are you blind?" the woman shouted, staring at her dress now drenched in water. Mikuro's heart sank. "Ah, sorry, Ma, I didn't see you. Please, Ma, let me clean it." She reached out to touch the fabric. "Don't touch me," the woman snapped, stepping back. "Do you know how expensive this dress is? You this dirty girl." Mikuro lowered her head. "I'm very sorry, Ma. It was a mistake." "A mistake," the woman barked. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the morning air. "Is that you people work here? No manners, no training." Before Mikuro could say another word, the woman stormed past her and entered the small office where Mikuro's boss sat. Mikuro stood frozen, her hands trembling. She could hear the woman's angry voice. "Fire her," the woman shouted. "If this is the kind of person you employ, I'm taking my business elsewhere. I can't deal with such carelessness." Mikuro's boss, a bald man with tired eyes, tried to calm her down. "Madam, please, it's not that serious. She's a good worker. I don't care," the woman yelled. "If you don't sack her, I'm done with your shop, and don't forget my fiancé is one of your biggest customers." The boss sighed heavily. He walked out of the office and called Mikuro. She stepped forward, her heart pounding as if it would burst out of her chest. "Mikuro," he said softly, avoiding her eyes. "I don't know how to say this. Please, sir. I didn't mean to." "Mikuro," he cut her off. "You've been a good worker, but I can't afford to lose a customer like her. I'm sorry, but you'll have to leave." Mikuro dropped to her knees. "Ah, sir, please don't do this. I have nowhere to go. This is where I live, where I eat. Please, sir, don't send me away." Her boss looked at her with pity, but he shook his head. "Mikuro, I'm sorry, my hands are tied." The well-dressed woman stood at the doorway, smirking. "That will teach you to watch where you're going," she said before leaving with a loud. Mikuro sat on the floor, tears streaming down her face. Her world had just crumbled. Where would she go? How would she survive? The day was just beginning. But for Mikuro, it already felt like the end. Mikuro sat on the floor of the laundry shop, her head buried in her hands. The tears wouldn't stop. She looked up at her boss one last time. "Sir, please, I don't have anywhere to go. I will work harder. I will wake up earlier. Please don't send me away." Mikuro begged, her voice trembling. Her boss sighed deeply, rubbing his forehead. "Mikuro, it's not about your hard work, you know. I appreciate you, but that woman is my best customer. If I lose her, it will affect my business. I'm sorry you have to leave, but where will I go?" Mikuro cried, "This is the only place I have. How will I eat?" "Eat, please." "Sir, have mercy on me, Mikuro," he said, avoiding her teary eyes. "I've already made up my mind. You can't stay here anymore. Just pack your things." Mikuro felt like her world was crashing. She looked around the tiny shop where she had spent the last 2 years. It wasn't much, but it had been her home. She had no family, no friends, and no money that evening. With nothing but a small bag of her clothes, Mikuro walked aimlessly through the streets. The sun had set, and the town was quiet except for the occasional sound of cars passing by. She felt invisible, like the world had forgotten she existed. As she wandered, she saw an uncompleted building. The walls were high, but there were no doors or windows. Yet she peeped inside and saw a flat surface of cement blocks. It wasn't safe, but it was better than sleeping on the street. Mikuro climbed inside, laid her bag on the cold floor, and sat down. "God, please help me," she whispered. She lay on the floor using her wrapper as a blanket. The night was long and cold, but she stayed awake. Her mind filled with thoughts of what tomorrow would bring. The next morning, the sound of voices woke Mikuro. She sat up quickly, startled to see a group of men walking into the building, holding tools and wearing helmets. They stopped in their tracks when they saw her. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" One of the men asked, his tone firm but not unkind. Mikuro stood up, her hands shaking. "Please, sir, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to trespass. I lost my job and I'm hoping to have the opportunity to work here. Please, I can work. Let me help with the construction. I'll do anything." The men exchanged glances, some of them shaking their heads. "This is not a job for women." One of them said, "It's hard work lifting heavy blocks, mixing cement. Are you sure you can handle it?" "I can do it, sir," Mikuro said, her voice firm. "I'm strong. Please just give me a chance." The men hesitated, whispering among themselves. Finally, one of them said, "You have to talk to the boss. He'll be here soon." Mikuro nodded. "Thank you, sir. I'll wait." She sat quietly in a corner of the building, watching as the workers began their tasks. The smell of cement filled the air, and the sound of hammers echoed around her. Mikuro felt a small flicker of hope after about an hour. A tall man in a white shirt and safety boots walked into the building. His face was strict, and he looked like someone who didn't take nonsense. The workers quickly gathered around him, explaining Makuro's situation. The man walked up to Mikuro, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. "So you want to work here?" he asked, his voice deep. "Yes, sir," Mikuro said. "Standing straight, I have no place to go, and I need to survive. I will do my best." The man raised an eyebrow. "This is not a place for playing. If you cannot handle it, you will leave. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir, I understand all right," he said after a long pause. "You can start tomorrow." Mikuro's face lit up. "Thank you, sir." "God bless you, sir." As the workers returned to their tasks, Mikuro sat in the corner, tears streaming down her face this time. Not from sadness, but from a glimmer of hope. The next morning, Mikuro started her first day on the site. The sun was hot and the work was harder than she expected. She carried heavy blocks on her head, mixed cement with sand, and fetched water from a nearby tap. Her arms ached and her legs felt weak, but she didn't stop. The workers watched her with surprise. "Ah, this girl is really strong," one of them said. Another laughed honestly. "She's even working better than some of the boys here." Mikuro ignored their comments and kept working. She knew she had no choice. This was her second chance, and she couldn't afford to mess it up. A week later, the owner of the building, Mr. Francis, arrived unexpectedly. He was a well-dressed man with a calm but commanding presence. As he walked around the site, inspecting the work, he noticed something unusual in the corner of the site. A young girl was carrying heavy blocks on her head. Her clothes were stained with cement, and sweat dripped down her face, but she didn't stop. "Who is that girl?" Mr. Francis asked the engineer. Pointing at Mikuro, the engineer hesitated, then replied, "Ah, sir, her name is Mikuro. She has been working with us for about a week now. Why is she doing this kind of work?" "This is not work for a young girl," Mr. Francis said, frowning. The engineer explained how Mikuro had nowhere to go and had begged to be allowed to work. "She's very hard-working, sir. She doesn't complain, and she gets the job done." Mr. Francis shook his head. "This is not right. Call her here." The engineer nodded and waved Mikuro over. She quickly wiped her face with the edge of her dress and walked to where they were standing. "Good morning, sir," Mikuro said, bowing slightly. "Morning, Mr. Francis," said, his voice kind but firm. "What's your name?" "Mikuro, sir." "Mikuro, why are you doing this kind of work? Don't you know it's dangerous and too hard for someone like you?" Mikuro lowered her head. "Sir, I have no other choice. I need to survive. Please, sir, don't send me away. I'll do anything to keep this job." Mr. Francis sighed deeply. "This is not the kind of life a young girl like you should live. You can't continue here. I'll speak to the engineer. You have to stop this work." Mikuro's heart sank. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at Mr. Francis, hoping he would change his mind. The sun was setting when the engineer called Mikuro aside. His face looked heavy, and Mikuro's heart sank even before he spoke. "Mikuro," he began slowly, Mr. Francis said, "You can't continue working here." He said, "It's for your own good. You are too young to be carrying this kind of load." Mikuro's chest tightened. "Sir, please, I have nowhere to go. I'll work harder, I promise. I don't even mind sleeping here." The engineer shook his head. "It's not my decision. You have to leave. I'm sorry, you know what they say. Every disappointment is a blessing. I believe God will grant you a better opportunity." Tears spilled from Mikuro's eyes as she packed her few belongings and moved to another uncompleted building that night as she lay on the cold cement floor. Mikuro felt more alone than ever. She hugged herself, shivering in the night air. "God, why me?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "What did I do to deserve this?" But no answer came. Meanwhile, Mr. Francis went to the laundry to collect his freshly cleaned clothes. The owner greeted him warmly. "Good evening, sir." "Welcome, good evening," Mr. Francis replied as he handed over his receipt. While waiting for his clothes, he glanced around the shop, his thoughts drifting back to Mikuro. Something about her had stayed with him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that she needed help. "Excuse me," he said to the owner. "Do you know a girl named Mikuro? She used to work here." The owner's cheerful expression faded. "Mikuro, she had a problem with one of our C customers. The woman wasn't happy and demanded I sack her. It was your fiancé, Chinny, that said she must go." Mr. Francis blinked in surprise. "Chinny, are you sure?" "Yes, sir. She was very upset that Mikuro spilled water on her clothes. She even threatened to stop bringing her laundry." "Here, if I didn't fire the girl." Francis was quiet for a moment. "Do you know where Mikuro is now?" The owner shook his head. "No idea, sir. She just left like that. I don't think she had anywhere to go." Francis thanked the owner and collected his clothes, but his mind was troubled. Why would Chinny go so far as to get a girl fired over something so small? And where was Mikuro now? As he drove home that evening, Francis couldn't help but feel a deep sense of guilt. He knew he had to find Mikuro, no matter how long it took. A few days later, Mikuro was walking along the roadside, her slippers barely protecting her feet from the rough ground. She wrapped her arms around herself, hoping to find some warmth. The road was quiet except for the occasional car speeding past. Suddenly, bright headlights lit up the path ahead, and a black SUV slowed down beside her. The window rolled down and a familiar voice called out, "Mikuro." She froze, straining to see who it was. It was Mr. Francis, sir. Mikuro's voice was shaky, unsure if she should run or stay. "What are you doing here at this time of night?" Francis asked his voice full of concern. "I don't have anywhere to go," she admitted quietly, staring at the ground. Francis frowned. "Get in the car." Mikuro hesitated. "Sir, I don't want to disturb you. You're not disturbing me. I can't leave you here like this. Please enter." After a moment, Mikuro climbed into the car as they drove. Francis asked her questions about her life. She told him about the laundry job, the uncompleted building, and how she had been trying to survive. Francis sighed deeply. "You're too young to be going through all this. You come to my house. I'll find work for you." There, Mikuro's eyes widened. "Your house, but sir, I know buts." Francis interrupted. "You need help, and I can help. Don't worry." Mikuro finally nodded. "Thank you, sir. God bless you." When they arrived at Francis's house, it was already late. The mansion was well lit with large windows and a neatly trimmed garden. Mikuro couldn't believe her eyes as they stepped inside. Chen appeared from the living room, her eyes narrowing when she saw Mikuro. "Who is this?" Chinny demanded, her tone sharp. Francis remained calm. "Her name is Mikuro. She'll be staying here." What Chinese voice? "Rose, this dirty girl in my house." "Are you serious, Francis?" "Yes, I am," he replied firmly. "She needs help, and I've decided to help her." "That's final." Chinny threw her hands in the air. "Francis, have you lost your mind? Do you know what people will say if they see her here?" "I don't care what people say," Francis said, his voice steady. "Mikuro is staying. She'll work here and have a place to sleep." Chinny glared at Mikuro, who stood silently, feeling like an intruder. "This is not your decision alone, Francis." "It is now," Francis said. "She'll be staying in the guest room." Mr. Francis then showed Mikuro to her room. The bed looked soft, and there was even a small window with curtains. Mikuro sat down slowly, her heart pounding as she lay down that night. She couldn't shake the feeling of unease Chinny's anger had been loud and clear, and Mikuro knew that her troubles might not be over yet. From the moment Mikuro started working in the house, Chinny treated her like a pest. Every little thing Mikuro did seemed to annoy her. Is this how you sweep? Look at the corner. Chinny snapped one morning, pointing at an already spotless floor. I'm sorry, Ma Mikuro said quietly, grabbing the broom to sweep again. Sorry for yourself, Chinny, hissed, walking away with a frown. It wasn't just the harsh words. Chinny made sure Mikuro felt unwelcome in every way. She refused to let Mikuro eat, most of the time saying this house is not a free-for-all. If you're hungry, manage whatever you brought from outside. One night, Frances came home earlier than usual and found Mikuro sitting by herself in the kitchen, staring at an empty plate. Mikuro, have you eaten? He asked. Mikuro hesitated, then shook her head. No, sir. Why not? There's food in this house. Mikuro lowered her gaze. Madam said I shouldn't eat. Francis's eyes darkened. He stormed into the living room where Chinny was scrolling through her phone. Why are you starving her? He demanded. Chinny didn't even look up. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't pretend. Frances said firmly, Mikuro is here to work, not to suffer. Go and serve her food now. Chinny laughed bitterly. You're making this girl too comfortable, Frances. But fine if that's what you want. Moments later, Chinny placed a bowl of watery soup and a tiny piece of yam in front of Mikuro. Here, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Enjoy. Mikuro's hands trembled as she picked up the spoon. She couldn't stop the tears rolling down her cheeks. Thank you, Ma, she whispered, her voice breaking. Chin smiled mockingly and walked away, leaving Mikuro to cry silently into her meal. Despite everything, Mikuro remained kind. She kept doing her chores quietly, avoiding trouble. Where she could. One day, Frances came back home after a long day at work. The house was quiet and Chinny was nowhere to be found. He tried calling her, but she didn't answer. Then he remembered she had told him a few days ago that she had a party to attend. Maybe she's still at the party. Francis thought as he went to his room. It was very late, almost midnight, when Chinny returned home. The loud bang of the door woke Mikuro. Chinny was staggering. Her makeup was all over her face and her clothes smelled of alcohol. She barely made it into the house before she bent over and started vomiting in the living room. Mikuro quickly rushed out of her room. Madam, are you okay? She asked, worried. Chinny just waved her hand weakly and slumped onto the floor without saying anything else. Mikuro grabbed a mop and cleaned up the mess. Then she helped Chinny to her feet. Let me take you to bed, Madam, Mikuro said softly, though it wasn't easy carrying Chinny, who was leaning so heavily on her. Mikuro finally got her to the bed and noticed something was wrong. Chinny's body felt very hot. Ah, she has a fever, Mikuro whispered. She quickly went to the kit, brought a bowl of cold water and began dabbing Chinny's forehead with a cloth. After some time, Chinny woke up, but instead of thanking Mikuro, she looked at her with anger. What are you doing? Why are you touching me? Chinny shouted, Madam, you were not feeling well. I was just trying to help you. Mikuro explained, still holding the wet cloth with your dirty hands. How dare you touch my skin? Chinny yelled. She grabbed the bowl of water and emptied it on Mikuro's head, drenching her clothes. Mikuro stood there, shocked, her eyes filling with tears. I was only trying to help, she said quietly. Just then, Francis walked into the room. He looked at the water on the floor, Mikuro standing soaked and Chinny yelling. What is going on here? Francis asked. Frowning, Chinny pointed at Mikuro. She thinks she can touch me with her filthy hands. Francis turned to Chinny, his voice firm. Do you even hear yourself? You came back home like this, drunk, vomiting, and instead of thanking her for taking care of you, you're insulting her. How can you be so heartless? Chinny tried to say something, but Francis cut her off. Enough, I don't want to hear anything from you. He walked over to Mikuro and gently took her hand. Come with me. He said. He led Mikuro to the living room, handed her a towel to dry herself, and sat next to her. Don't let her words hurt you, Francis said kindly. You have a good heart, Mikuro. You didn't deserve that. Naam wiped her tears. I was only trying to help, sir. I didn't mean to make her angry. Francis looked at her and smiled softly. You did nothing wrong. You're better than her in so many ways. As they sat there, something warm and unspoken passed between them. Francis couldn't stop thinking about Mikuro's kindness, and Mikuro felt safe in his presence. It was a moment neither of them would forget. Francis had always been a busy man, so he rarely paid attention to small details at home. But lately something had changed every evening when he came home. Tired, Mikuro would meet him at the door with a warm smile. "Welcome, sir. How was your day?" she would ask gently at first. Francis only gave short answers. It was fine or busy, as usual. But Makuro's genuine interest made him pause one evening. It was stressful. Honestly, he admitted too many meetings. Mikuro nodded with understanding. "Sorry, sir. You've been working hard. Would you like me to make you some tea?" Francis blinked. It was such a simple gesture, but it touched him deeply. "Yes, please, that would be nice." As Mikuro disappeared into the kitchen, Francis couldn't help but think about her. She was always so calm and respectful, even when Chinny was harsh, unlike Chinny, who rarely asked about his day or showed concern. All she does is demand money to fund her frivolous lifestyle. But Makuro's kindness stood out over the next few days. Francis started noticing more how Mikuro would quietly tidy up without being told, how she greeted everyone with a smile, how she seemed to carry a lightness that made the house feel warmer. Even with Chinny's constant grumbling one evening, as Chinny complained loudly about something unimportant, Francis found himself tuning her out and glancing at Mikuro, who was folding clothes in the corner. He frowned, realizing he was beginning to compare the two women. Francis decided to do something thoughtful after work. He stopped at a boutique and picked out dresses, some for Chinny and one for Mikuro. When he got home, he handed the bags to each of them. Chinny grabbed hers with a frown. "What's this?" she asked, frowning at the bag. "A little something for you," Francis replied, simply. Chinny barely looked at the dress before tossing it on the couch. Thanks, I guess." Mikuro, on the other hand, stared at the bag in disbelief. "For me, sir?" "Yes, Mikuro, open it," Francis encouraged with trembling hands. Mikuro pulled out a simple yet beautiful dress. Her eyes filled with tears as she clutched it to her chest. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice shaking. "Nobody has ever given me a gift before." Francis smiled. "You deserve it." "Mikuro, you've been working so hard," Chinny, who had been watching from the corner, suddenly exploded. "What is all this nonsense?" she yelled. "Why are you buying gifts for her? Are you trying to embarrass me in this house?" Francis turned to her calmly. "Chinny, it's just a dress. Why are you making it a big deal?" Chinny scoffed. "A dress? Right, I can see what's going on here. You're beginning to favor her over me, right?" "Be careful." Francis. Mikuro stepped back, clutching the dress tightly. "I'm sorry if I caused any problem, Ma," she said softly. "Keep quiet." Chinny snapped, pointing a finger at Mikuro. "You think you're smart, eh? I'm watching you." Francis sighed heavily, rubbing his forehead. "Chinny, stop this drama. Mikuro is part of this household, and I'll treat her with respect if you can't handle that. Maybe you should rethink your attitude," Chinny stormed off, slamming the door behind her, while Mikuro stood frozen, tears of joy streaming down her face the next morning. As Francis left for work, the house grew quiet. Mikuro was in the kitchen when she heard Chen's footsteps behind her. She turned around, but before Mikuro could say anything, Chinny's angry voice cut through the air. "You think you can just walk in here and take my man away from me?" Chinny shouted. Her eyes were filled with fury. "You're nothing but a dirty girl trying to steal what doesn't belong to her." Mikuro took a step back, her heart racing. "Madam, shut up!" Chinny shouted, stepping closer. "You don't know your place, you think? Because he bought you a stupid dress. You're special." "Well, you're not," before Mikuro could respond. Chinny stormed into the room where the dress Francis had bought from Mikuro was hanging with a cruel smile. She grabbed the dress and marched outside. Mikuro followed, her voice shaking. "Please, madam, don't. That dress means so much to me." "Shut your mouth," Chinny interrupted, holding the dress up to the fire. "This is what happens when you try to take what's mine." Makuro's eyes widened as she watched the flames consume the dress. She couldn't move, her tears falling freely. "Please don't do this," she pleaded, but Chinny was relentless. "You'll never be good enough for him. I'll make sure of that." Chinny sneered when the dress was completely burned. Chinny turned and walked away, leaving Mikuro standing there sobbing. Mikuro didn't know what to do or where to go. She had nothing left. A week later, Francis was getting ready to leave for the building site when he saw Mikuro in the yard. He smiled at her and asked Mikuro, "Would you like to visit the building site today? Some of your old colleagues from the construction site are there." I'm sure they'll be happy to see you again." Mikuro's face lit up. She had always been grateful to the workers at the site. They had been kind to her, helping her when she needed it most. Seeing them again would be a great way to show her appreciation. "Yes, sir, I'd love to," Mikuro replied, her heart racing with excitement. Frances smiled and walked toward the car, waiting for Mikuro to come out. Mikuro quickly ran inside to get ready. She had to look her best for the reunion, but when she finally stepped out, Frances's smile faded. He looked at her in surprise. "Mikuro, why are you wearing that old dress?" Mikuro froze, her heart dropped. She couldn't tell him the truth. Not yet, not when Chinny had threatened her so much. I'm saving the new dress for a special occasion," she said quietly. Avoiding his gaze, Chinny was standing in the corner. Watching them, her eyes were sharp, warning Mikuro not to speak. She made a small gesture with her eyes. "If you tell him anything, I'll make you regret it." Mikuro hesitated. She didn't want to disappoint Frances, but she also didn't want to anger Chinny. She looked back at Chinny, who was glaring at her. Frances saw the hesitation in Mikuro's eyes. He raised his voice. "Mikuro, what is wrong with you? Get in the car, we're leaving." Now Mikuro stood still, unsure what to do. Chinny was still watching, and Mikuro was scared. But then Frances noticed Chinny standing in the corner with her eyes filled with hostility. He understood what was going on. "Mikuro," Frances shouted again. "Get in the car," I said now. With a sigh, Mikuro walked toward the car. She didn't want to make things worse, so she climbed into the car and sat down. "Let's go," Frances said to Mikuro as the car drove off. Mikuro looked back at Chinny, who was still staring at them angrily. Mikuro didn't know what was coming next, but she knew one thing for sure. Chinny was not going to stop until she had pushed Mikuro out of the picture. For good one afternoon, Chinny called Mikuro to the living room. "Mikuro, come here, sit down, let's talk," she said in a calm, almost sweet voice. Mikuro was surprised Chinny had never allowed her to sit on the couch before. She hesitated for a moment, but then walked over and sat down carefully. "Don't be scared," Chinny said, gesturing for her to relax. "Leighton, just talk." Mikuro sat on the couch, still unsure of what was going on. Chinny's voice softened as she began to speak. "I know I've been hard on you ever since you came into this house. I've said things I shouldn't have, and I've treated you badly. But today I want to make amends," Chinny said, looking Mikuro straight in the eye. "I want to treat you like my younger sister from now on. Please forgive me for all my past mistakes." Mikuro blinked confused, but then smiled lightly. "Ma'am, I don't hold any grudges. We're good. Thanks for letting me stay in your home," she said, trying to match Chinny's tone for a moment. It seemed like the tension had lifted. Chinny smiled back, and there was a warmth in her eyes that Mikuro hadn't seen before. "Can I ask you for a favor?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Anything?" "Ma," Mikuro replied, eager to keep the peace. Chin smiled. "I'm not good at cooking. Can you make some noodles for me?" Mikuro's face lit up. She was happy to do something for Chinny, especially since things seemed to be improving. "Of course, I'll make it right away." She hurried to the kitchen and cooked the noodles, bringing a bowl to Chinny. When it was ready, Chinny looked pleased as Mikuro set the bowl in front of her. Then, Mikuro excused herself and went to her room, thinking everything was fine. A few seconds later, she heard Chinny's voice shouting from the living room. Mikuro's heart skipped a beat as she rushed out to see what had happened. "Madam, what happened?" Mikuro asked, her voice trembling. Chinny was standing, her face twisted in anger. "So you want to poison me?" she yelled. "What did I ever do to you?" Mikuro's mouth fell open in shock. "Madam, I didn't put anything into your food. Please believe me," she said, trying to stay calm. Chinny pointed an accusing finger at Mikuro, tears streaming down her face. "I saw you with my own two eyes. You put something in my food. This wicked girl wants to take my life." She cried out, looking at Frances as he walked into the room. Francis was confused, looking between the two women. "What's going on here?" he asked. His voice tense, Chinny cried louder, pointing at Mikuro. "Look at her. She's the one. She's trying to poison me." She shouted, practically wailing. Mikuro stepped forward, trying to explain herself. "Madam, I swear, I didn't put anything in your food. I was just trying to help," but Chinny wasn't listening. She continued to shout, her eyes wide with fake fear. "She's lying, Francis. She's poisoned my food." Mikuro, desperate to prove her innocence, couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed the bowl of noodles that Chenny had barely touched, and without a second thought ate a large spoonful in front of them. There you see, Mikuro said, swallowing the noodles. There's nothing in your food. I didn't poison you. But before she could finish speaking, Mikuro felt a sharp pain in her stomach. She doubled over, clutching her belly as the room spun around her. Mikuro, Francis shouted, rushing toward her, as she fell to her knees, gasping for air. What's happening? Are you okay? Mikuro screamed in pain, her vision blurring. I, I don't know. It hurts, she cried, tears streaming down her face. Chenny stood at the side, watching Mikuro in silence. Then a wicked smile appeared on her face and she started to laugh. Told you, Francis, she said, almost happy. I saw her with my own eyes. She poisoned the food. Francis was in a panic. He turned to Mikuro, who was now lying on the floor, clutching her stomach, her breathing shallow. Mikuro, he shouted, hold on. I'm taking you to the hospital. He scooped Mikuro up in his arms and rushed out of the house, his mind racing. He couldn't believe what was happening. What had Chenny done? Was this all a trick? Mikuro slowly opened her eyes in the hospital bed. The soft beeping of the machines was the first thing she heard. Francis was sitting beside her, holding her hand tightly. His face was filled with worry, but when he saw her awake, his eyes softened with relief. Mikuro, you're awake, thank God, he said, his voice shaky. Mikuro tried to smile but was still weak. What happened? She asked quietly, her voice barely a whisper. You collapsed after eating the noodles, Francis explained. But you're okay now, the doctor said. You're going to be fine. Mikuro closed her eyes again, remembering the pain. And how Chenny had accused her. She felt tears welling up inside, but she didn't say anything. Francis looked at her with serious eyes. Mikuro, I have to tell you something. He paused. I checked the living room cameras. Chenny did something terrible. She set you up. Mikuro looked at him in shock. What do you mean, sir? Chenny, she put something in that food to make it look like you were poisoning her. Francis said, his voice growing harder with each word. I saw it all on the footage. She's the one who did this. Mikuro stared at him, stunned. But why? What did I do to deserve this? Francis looked down, his heart heavy. I don't know, but I will make sure she pays for what she did with that. He stood up and left the room, his mind set on confronting Chenny. When he got home, he didn't hold back. He walked into the living room where Chenny was seated. Pack your things and leave my house. Francis said, what's going on? Chenny asked, don't pretend you don't know. Francis replied, there's a camera in this living room and I've seen everything. If I call the police, you'll be in big trouble, so just leave with that. Francis turned and walked away, leaving Chenny standing there trembling. She knew there was no way out now. Ashamed, she quietly gathered her things and left her head hanging low. Days passed, and Mikuro slowly regained her strength. She was back in the house, resting in the room that Francis had prepared for her. Francis came to her one afternoon, sitting by her side with a smile on his face. Mikuro, he said gently, I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate you. You didn't deserve any of this. You're a good person, and I want to make things right. Mikuro looked at him, still not fully understanding what was happening. I'm just glad I'm okay, she replied softly. You are more than okay, Francis continued. I've been thinking a lot about your future. You told me you wanted to go back to school, right? Mikuro nodded slowly, unsure of where he was going with this. Francis smiled, his eyes shining with kindness. I've already spoken to the right people, and I've made sure you're enrolled again. I'll help you with the fees, whatever you need. I'll be here to support you. This is your chance to chase your dreams. Mikuro's eyes widened. You're serious? Of course I am, he said, his voice firm but warm. You deserve every opportunity. Mikuro, I believe in you. Tears filled Mikuro's eyes as she looked at him, feeling overwhelmed with gratitude. Thank you, sir. You don't know how much this means to me. You don't have to thank me, Francis said, his voice filled with sincerity. You're family now, and family takes care of each other. Mikuro smiled, feeling a warmth she had never felt before. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a real chance at a future where she could finally be free of fear and doubt. And with Francis by her side, Mikuro knew she could do anything. She wasn't alone anymore. One evening, Francis sat in the living room, lost in thought. Mikuro walked in to ask if he needed anything. Her simple smile and gentle voice always had a way of calming him. "Mikuro," he said, looking up at her. "Yes, sir," she replied, standing respectfully, her hands clasped in front of her. "Come and sit," Francis said, patting the seat beside him. Mikuro hesitated, but eventually sat down for a moment. He didn't say anything, just looking at her. Then he spoke, his voice soft but firm. "Mikuro, you've been through so much, yet you're always kind. You never complain. Your humility, your strength, it amazes me." Mikuro blinked, surprised. "Sir, I'm just doing my best." "No, it's more than that," Francis said, his eyes meeting hers. "You've changed my life in ways I didn't expect. And I think I've fallen in love with you." Mikuro's eyes widened. She was speechless. "I know it's sudden," Francis continued, "but my heart has never been this sure about anything," Sir Mikuro started, her voice trembling. "You're a big man. Don't say that." Francis interrupted gently. "It's not about where you're coming from. It's about who you are, and you, Mikuro, are extraordinary." Mikuro looked down, her heart racing. She didn't know what to say. "Take your time," Francis said. "But I just wanted you to know how I feel." A few months later, Francis called Mikuro into the living room. This time he wasn't sitting. He was standing, dressed neatly, holding a small velvet box in his hand. "Mikuro," he began as she walked in, her heart pounding, "I've made up my mind. I want you to be my wife." Mikuro gasped, "Sir, are you sure?" Francis smiled. "I've never been sure about anything in my life. You're everything I've been looking for." Tears filled Mikuro's eyes as she looked at him. "But I don't know how to be a wife. I don't know how to live like you." "We'll learn together," Francis said, taking her hands in his. "All I need is you by my side." Mikuro nodded slowly, her heart overwhelmed with joy and disbelief. "Yes, sir, I'll marry you," Francis laughed, pulling her into a hug. "No more, sir. Call me Francis." Their wedding was small but beautiful. Close friends and family gathered to celebrate the unlikely love story. Mikuro wore a simple white dress, and Francis couldn't take his eyes off her as they exchanged vows. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. It was a story of hope, love, and redemption. Mikuro's life changed forever. From a homeless girl on the streets to the cherished wife of a kind man, her journey was proof that kindness and perseverance could lead to unexpected blessings. Francis kept his promise to support Mikuro's dreams. She went back to school and later started a foundation to help young girls in need. This story teaches us that life can take unexpected turns, and no matter how tough things get, kindness, humility, and perseverance will always shine through. It reminds us never to judge people by their situation, but by the goodness of their hearts. True love isn't about wealth, status, or appearance. It's about seeing the beauty in someone's soul and standing by them, no matter what. To my amazing audience, what did you learn from this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you if you enjoyed the story.